Here I got Neje 2 Max into box, and here is Neje 3 Max. Box is same size, but it's 1.3 kg heavier. And when we opened them, we saw what we already expected from Neje. Amazing packaging with super protection, because every component is in its own place into sponge, so it's harder to make some scratches or other damage during transport. Let's unbox and check what you got into Neje 3 Max package. On first view, machines looks quite same, but in Neje 3 Max we have many more parts. First thing I notice is an aluminum L profile for cable chain, so you can manage cables like a pro. Frame is made out of 15 by 15 and 15 by 30 aluminum extruded profile, just as Neje 2, but almost every part that was acrylic on Neje 2 is now made of aluminum. Nicely machined aluminum, just look at all those chamfers. And there's more stickers with tips where and how, so assembling and using that laser shouldn't be a problem even for beginners. Okay, so here we got pre-assembled right Y-axis with carriage, motor and belt. Front and back part of the frame with aluminum legs. Pre-assembled left Y-axis with aluminum carriage, motor, cables and of course motherboard. And here is pre-assembled X-axis with motor, belt and cables. X-axis carriage is also on Neje 3 made out of acrylic, because force here is quite small, but it's much lighter than aluminum, so we can reach faster moves and accelerations. Here is some comparison between Neje 2 and 3. Not only they changed acrylic parts with aluminum, they also added screws for precise setting wheel backlash, and the edges isn't sharp anymore, but nicely chamfer. Then we got here two cable chain about 60 cm long for X and Y cable management. Amazing A40640 laser model I already tested with attached air assist steel tube, holder and tool. Then we got here three new amazing add-ons for the Neje 3. First one is as they call it door button, but I would say not house or emergency button. Here we got electromagnetic air valve. It's amazing add-on, so we can automatically turn on and off air assist while cutting with the software. Besides we get also some 4mm tube and coupling for 4 to 6mm. And the last add-on is a relay we can control by the software. It can be quite useful to power on ventilation system, compressor, RGB LED or whatever. Relay is an additional housing with cable terminals, and we also got two pieces of wire with connectors with it. And then we got some classic stuff like manual and some special soft and quality USB cable designed for cable chain. 12V 5A power supply, this time a bit bigger version. Red protective glasses. And a bag with screws, zip ties, screwdriver and so on. Neje 2 Max we assembled with only 6 screws. Well, with Neje 3 Max we got 8 bags of screws and nuts. And the last is back with some sample materials, like solid wood, plywood, cardboard and plastic sheets. Let's assemble the machine now. Assembling is just as simple as Neje 2 Max. With only 6 screws we assemble entire machine and it's some kind ready to work. Also assembling cable chain and other add-ons isn't a big deal, but paper manual can be a bit short, so go online where you got manual with many more details about assembling. To mount X-axis cable chain rail, use two L profiles from each end. We need to be careful only about one thing here. Aluminum rail got chamfered hole only on one side, and that side need to be at right back corner, so the chain won't stuck into the screw head. Then cut zip ties which hold the cables and unplug it from the motor. Then screw the cable chain holder on X-axis carriage. Before we manage cable through the chain, make sure we got chain turned on right way. One way got limited move, that part come mounted on X-axis carriage, so the chain can't go higher. Then I use a piece of electrical tape to get the air assist tube through the chain together with the cable. One end of chain screw in the middle of aluminum rail, and other end to X-axis carriage. And here you can see why is it so important to turn aluminum profile right. Now turn the machine and mount the laser model, and plug the cables so you can get the right length of cables and tubes on that side. Fix it with zip ties, then pull the excess cable and tube on other side of chain, but they shouldn't be too tight in the chain. Then mount Y-axis chain holder on same screws as X-axis aluminum rail. Make sure you got chain turned right and then install USB cable, power supply cable and air assist tube through the chain. After that, screw the chain on its holder. Instead of nut, use an air valve and tie it. Now just cut the tube and plug it to a valve. Plug all the cables and manage them with zip ties. Air assist valve plugged to M8 connector. M7 connector is for relay and door is for emergency button. I don't plug them for now, but we'll test later. Steel tube for air assist is easy to install, but need to bend it a bit so the air blows precisely into cutting area. There also come rubber pads for the legs and angles to screw machine on the table or into enclosure. Same the end of Y-axis chain need to screw somewhere, but also double side tape will do the job. Okay, machine is now assembled and ready to use. Out of chain we have 3 inputs: power supply, USB cable and tube to supply compressed air. I have here additional manual valve, but the electrical valve will be closed in any case until we trigger them with software. It's time for a quick comparison with Neje 2. As you say, machines are quite identical, exact same size, same design, same motors, motherboard is on same place and so on. But Neje 3 is heavier due to aluminum parts and look more, I don't know how to say, complicated, fuller, next to an empty Neje 2. But actually just the chain and valve make this feel. Because of aluminum legs and Y carriages, Neje 3 is to feel more rigid, so I just make a simple test. While machine is off, I move one of Y motor and measure the distance when the motor on other side lose step. Neje 3 move before that long axis reach 10 mm of difference, while Neje 2 go over 21, so big improvement. But the biggest improvement of Neje 3 is hidden right here. On first view, new Neje 3 board look quite same, but got two major differences. There is only one microcontroller for Neje and GRBL mode. That means that machine now also in Neje mode work on 32-bit. And second difference is two output and one input connector, or the gold, so we can plug the air assist valve, relay and safety button. It still got movement protection, Bluetooth and so on. The only thing we lose so far is offline mode. The front button is temporary only for turning on and off the machine, which is useful because motor on Neje 3 hold the position right after we turn it on. But Neje still developed this button as custom type button. So far I don't know more, but maybe also offline function come back. Now plug the power supply and USB cable to a PC. USB cable go through the chain, so it may be a bit short and you'll need an extender. First of all, go to Neje wiki, tap Neje 3 and download and install driver. Then download and open the app. It will instantly remind you to update machine firmware. They simplify the process, so they integrate firmware uploader into basic app. When updating the system firmware, I got some timeout errors, so I removed my USB extender, but the error was repeated. But when everything restarted, it say up to date, and everything seemed to work fine. So flash also Neje and GRBL firmware, without error this time. Neje app is quite similar as it was. We got here info from machine, control tab, photo tab and so on. Biggest difference is in settings menu. Here we can set the sensitivity of tilt protection and idle laser power. Below we can set the starting position of laser, and on the right side we can set functions of outputs and their delay of turning off. Below also add some firmware settings like working area, speed and acceleration of each axis, so the board can be useful also for some DIY projects. You may notice that there is missing really important CNC tab. Neje software is under major update, so temporarily doesn't offer CNC cutting, but Neje developed team will fix that soon, since they are very active. Only in time I tested this laser, 3 new versions of softwares come out. If I try to connect with Lightburn, it only say machine isn't in GRBL mode. So before connect to Lightburn we need to open Neje software and close them, so it asks us what to do. We need to choose close and switch to GRBL mode. That's because only one microcontroller. and that setting will be active until we open Neje app again. Neje prepare machine to light burn very well. Everything works as it should. They also prepare manual what and how to set up. But the only settings I need to change is working area size, which is amazing. Idle power of laser and GRBL mode was way too powerful. I got some old version of light burn which doesn't offer to change that function. So I opened laser GRBL and into firmware settings changed $40 from 0.5 to 0.05, which is enough to set focus and doesn't damage any surface. Let's test now the door or safety button. Machine works just fine without it, but if you want to use them, just plug it to door connector and that's it. Into Neje software it works instantly. When we activate them, machine instantly stop and app display the alarm. There notes that the door button doesn't work into light burn, but for me it worked just good. It instantly stopped the machine and it also messaged the alarm, check door. But the truth is that the light burn can freeze when we push the door button. If we reset the door button and click stop button so the laser isn't busy and then homing, it will work every time. What about the relay? Firstly I open the housing to see what we get. There are just a relay to trigger it with laser software to start some ventilation system, compressor and so on. There are 3 cable terminals, but be careful because only plus or line is switchable via relay. N and E terminals are just bridged. We can switch literally everything with it. Depend on what kind of supply we bring to it. We can switch a tiny LED or a ventilation motor. Relay says it can handle up to 10 amp, but if you use it for some powerful ventilation or even a compressor, I would use it only to trigger bigger relay or even the contactor, like I have here, which easily switching 3-phase 11 kW motor. Okay, so far everything works smooth, so I set focus and make some tests. This time I also got a few pieces of honeycomb panels, which I got from kind viewer who noticed I don't own them. So once again, big thanks Marian. Cutting results are much better with that panels. After first test I noticed that light burn make darker edges. This is due to acceleration and deceleration of x-axis. To avoid this effect, simply apply over scanning for a few millimeter and annoying effect will gone. Then I tried to make some engraves and notice same thing as every time. Quality of engravings depend on speed of engraving, no matter how fast the machine is advertised. And still think that Neje software makes better grayscale engraves, plus we don't need a PNG files. Here are some examples. I already tested this laser, so I won't go into details. This laser is suitable for cutting, but as we can see it also makes some engrave. I still got in plan to make video about all the laser models, so more about in that video. Then I tried to make some cutting. A40640 is extremely powerful model and can easily cut 10mm spruce wood, 20mm is on the limit. Then I tried to cut some box out of 3mm plywood. Pieces was a bit bigger, so the motors make longer travels. But during cutting with light burn, laser stop respond a few times. Here you can see that it stopped at the moment when the compressor starts running. Light burn stay busy, but the laser don't move at all. Laser still cut with set power. I thought it was my shitty old USB extender, so I buy a new a bit better one, but it doesn't help. After just a few clicks on Google I found that it may be a static electrical problem. And all I need to do is ground the laser module and rails, as it got auto engraver. So I take some 0.5 square millimeter wire and some tools to ground some component. I complicated a bit, so I go with wire through the mesh as the other cables, but still need less than half an hour to done the job. I lose many pictures during transfer, so I hope you can see how I ground everything. I start with cable on laser module, go to x-axis motor and chain holder. Through the chain on left y-axis motor and from there solder wire to negative on motherboard. So I got grounded some elements. Mainframe and right Y motor still isn't grounded, but look like I done the job right because fail was never repeated again, even if I used USB extender. After that simple modification it can cut big area quite fast without any issue. So I tried to cut some box out of 3mm plywood, which was cut in a single go. That A40640 laser model is really amazing for cutting. Then I tried to make some engrave on raw inox steel. Engrave was quite good, but factory settings of focus on A40640 model is for cutting. Now I'll try to set it for powerful engrave. Firstly remove air assist and then with big screwdriver unscrew the lens. Factory settings is exact 1 turn unscrewed for fully tighten. Now I'll unscrew the lens for 5 turns, so it got about 2.5 mm gap between lens edge and aluminum housing. Focal length is now much closer, so you need to lower down laser model closer to material you want to engrave to get right focus, so you can't use that type of air assist in that settings. Also set right focus in that mode is much harder, because just 0.1 mm make a big difference, so I just engrave some lines slowly and set focus while it engrave. You can hear the power, so sound will tell you when you get perfect focus. Engraved dot is now much smaller and more energy is focused in a smaller point, so it engrave more powerful, but only on exact point. When we're changing focal length it quickly become bigger. That's why that settings isn't good for cutting at all. Here you can see quite big difference, and when I set engraving line to every 0.05 mm difference was even bigger, which is bestly seen under microscope. It makes solid engraving to inox, and engrave can't be wiped or scratched. Then I tried to engrave also on anodized aluminum plate, and even here I got best results ever. So I tried to make smallest readable engrave. 2 mm height text is nicely readable, and also 1 mm. 0.8 mm is on the limit, while 0.5 mm become unreadable. And here we can see if we set focus so the point is square, they are not as powerful as we set focus point shape a bit rectangle. Here are two engraves with exact same settings. Only difference is that on upper one I had dirty lens from wood engraving before. So after engraving wood, don't forget to wipe lens with a Q-tip. You can hardly see a grey dust film over the lens, but it reduces laser power more than you think. So if you feel that your model isn't as powerful as it was, try to clean the lens firstly. After a few tests, belts become a bit loose, which is normal for new belt. So all I do is to loosen front screw a bit and tie the belt with the pliers for one teeth, because we only can fix belt on each teeth. But with new belt tensioner you got with the machine now, we can tension the belt easier and more precise. I almost forgot to mention about the app. There are new phone app for Neje 3, now also available on Google Play, so download and install is even simpler. There are no much difference, it offers us to engrave photos out of cloud, out of phone or take any shot taken with the camera. We can set a photo, set size, set text and so on. Everything works smooth as it must. That's about it for today. I didn't review everything because I don't want to repeat myself, but only want to expose the improvements from Neje 2. If you want to know more, check my Neje 2 Max video and video about A40640 laser model. I really love the air assist valve on Neje 3, which open air just in time we need them and then close, which save us lot of noise and compressed air. I hope you got some new information about Neje 3. All I can say about is that Neje hit right to the point when they add air assist valve, relay and emergency button. Not because I got free sample, but honestly I think that Neje 3 is far the best laser in that price range. I think it's also the only laser with air assist valve. Adding chain is another plus, so we need less space, which is great to run them into enclosure box with automatic